Hello, and welcome. As we talk a little bit more about headline writing, one of the next things I wanted to talk about was the fact that um, headlines are usually always written in the present tense. Cut lines are also written in the present tense, but headlines are too. And the reason why they're written in the present tense, and they're also usually written with action verbs, which all writing should attempt to do, but usually there is usually in most cases we don't use passive voice. We try to use an active voice. And the reason is because headlines are supposed to be grabbing your attention, supposed to be compelling you into the story, supposed to be saying 13 people, are dead. That's passive. But, so instead of saying 13 people are dead, we would want to say, bomb kills 13, or explosion kills 13, or gunman kills 13. Those types of things really kind of put the emphasis and the effort on what has happened. And so, you have a nice strong verb, and it's present tense, which you get the idea that it's happening right then. It gives urgency, and so that's why we do it that way. So, in the case, we always write them in the present tense. Unlike stories that you write for the paper that are written in the past tense because you've already done the reporting, headlines and cut lines for stories, for the captions under photos, are written in the present tense. We also try to make them active voice, which means that we try to keep things. We try to say such and such kills. We don't try to say are killed. We try not to say 4 people are killed. Now, I will say that there are things times when we use sort of a past tense and a passive voice. We might say something like if we have a person like Senate approves terror bill, that would be a present tense. But maybe the case is that really the big thing is people know the terror bill is there. They know it's going to the Senate. It's not really that big a deal that the Senate passed it. We want to put the fact that the terror bill is what's up front, and so we put terror bill okayed or terror bill approved. In that case, it is a passive voice, and it does have that ed, which is just because it's a passive voice. But the reason you do that is to put the emphasis on the terror bill. And that would be the one exception, is we do that sometimes, but for the most part, we try to keep the verb, an action verb, we try to keep it in the present tense, and we try to, do that. Other things to keep in mind as far as headlines go, headlines need to be easily recognizable. We don't like to use a lot of abbreviations in headlines. While there are some words, like I told you, clout, that become common words we use in headlines, we also don't want to use words that people don't know. If it's not listed in the style book as okay on first reference, we'd probably not want to use it in the headline. We want to keep our headlines easy to read. We want people to know what we're talking about. Because if they see a bunch of words like OOP, OOP approves YZD, you're going to go, I don't give a crap about that. Whereas, maybe those are standing for very important things. Who knows what they might be. And so we try to keep things we know. We try not to use names unless people know who they are. If there's an ongoing murder or a mayor or something where these names have been in the news a lot, then it's okay to use the names. But if it's just a name like Bill Smith or Jeff Rogers was arrested yesterday, we probably wouldn't want to put that in there. Who cares who this person is? Now, like, for example, here in Springfield, an example of this would be like the Parsons trial. They can use Parsons because Parsons' name has been out there a lot, and he could be used in that form. The other thing is we try to keep the headline as short as possible. Although we do have space, we usually try to keep the headline as short as possible. The other thing, which I haven't talked about, and I think it fits well with this headline section, I'm going to talk about it briefly, is we also have a thing called subheads. Sometimes you'll see a headline, and then right below it, before the text and the byline, you'll see something like, 14 dead, and then it'll say, or, bomb kills 14, blast kills 14, fire destroys home, 3 homeless after fire. Sometimes you'll see a little text that's a little bit bigger. Usually it's around 18-point font. It's usually 2 or 3 lines, and it's usually in a column width. And sometimes it's across the whole story, but It's what we call a subhead. It's basically a secondary headline that gives us a little bit more information. So if you had saying like 14 dead, you might have it followed up with gunman attacks military base, gunman attacks newspaper, gunman does this, or bomb, terror bomber does this, or insurgency, IED kills 12. IED is an example of one where, improvised explosive device, that may be common enough language that we could use it in a headline, but some copy editors and some editors are really picky about not using things like IED, even though I think most people know what an IED is, an improvised explosive device. Now, with that said, a couple other things about headlines is, unlike titles of books, headlines are written, just like a sentence, the first word's capitalized and the rest isn't, unless it's a proper noun. We don't capitalize every word. With the exception of places like the New York Times, they do have a different style, but that's their style. And that's, that could vary from, place to place. But the other thing is we also don't like headlines that don't actually tell us what is going on. We want a verb in it. We don't want to say something like Parsons on trial or something like that. It's okay perhaps, or other things. Such and such. Guilty or something. Without Parsons guilty. We kind of want to be found guilty. We want to include a verb in it. Now there are always exceptions, and sometimes if you say Parsons guilty, people know what you're talking about. But for the most part, we do want to have a verb. We don't want things to be labels. If a headline that's a label is like a title of a book, Tale of Two Cities. Okay, it doesn't tell us what it's just a Tale of Two Cities. That's a title. It's not a headline. A headline tells us what's happening, and headlines have verbs. Otherwise, it's just a title or a slug or something else. So you need to have a verb, needs to be active, needs to be present tense. Occasional exceptions is if you want to emphasize something that would have been the object of the verb, instead of saying, bomb kills 14, you could change it to 14 killed. Or instead of, Senate approves terror bill, President signs terror bill, you could change it to terror bill approved or terror bill okayed. And that puts the emphasis on that type of thing versus the other.